All right, we will get ready with our first speaker, and if you are like me, let me see, I just want to get his notes here a little bit so I don't miss anything. But if you're like me, your to-do list, both professionally and personally, is probably a whole lot longer than you can manage. And unfortunately, there's no way to get more time. So we have a gentleman here from the Daytimers organization. His name is Mark Swain, and he's going to talk with us a little bit this morning about how to increase our capacities. Mark has worked for 15 years in doing workshops and seminars. He's an award-winning speaker with Toastmasters and was named Outstanding Young Man of America in 1998. He's a professional member of the National Speakers Association and president of the Utah Speakers Association. Mark?
Folks, I'm delighted to be with you here today. And like all of you, I'm excited to hear former First Lady Barbara Bush's keynote address. But right now I've been asked to talk to you a little bit about time, our most valuable commodity, without which you and I can do literally nothing with our lives. Before we started today, I looked around. It's always kind of fun to look out into the audience and kind of see what people are doing. I noticed that a number of you, as we got close to starting time, were kind of looking at your watches. And I guess the most asked question in the entire world is this: what time is it? I'd like to turn those words around a little bit and come up with another question. Time. What is it? I'd like you to team up with a neighbor and take about the next minute and a half or something. I'd like you to come up with your best definition of time. What is it? Go ahead and group up and let's see what you come up with. Okay, stop. Who's got a definition for time that they would not mind sharing with the entire group in here? Could I see some hands? Right here. Yes, sir.
The space between life and death.
You know, one of the things I really appreciate in life, folks, is somebody that can really distill things down to the essence. That is distilling things down to the essence. What's your name, sir?
Glenn Welch.
Glenn Welch, I'd like to give you a daytimer insert, and hopefully you can continue to get better control of your time in your life. Between life and death. Okay. One back here. Yes, ma'am. Why don't you go ahead and stand up? Your name is?
Donna Gillespie.
Donna Gillespie. What's your definition of time?
It's a man-devised system that we use to help us keep track of the things we have to do between light and day, or dark.
I'm not going to repeat that one. That sounds like Webster. Are you related to Webster by any chance? I'd like to go ahead and give you a daytimer insert as well. Let's give these folks a hand, folks. As we all know, Albert Einstein was one of the most respected minds of the 20th century. Here's what Mr. Einstein had to say when it comes to the question of what is time. Time is the occurrence of events one after another. In other words, folks, when you and I are managing time, what we are actually managing are events. And that's becoming harder and harder to do because of what we call the triple crossfire. Today, you and I are influenced by three factors. I'd like to talk just a little bit about these factors. The first one is technology. As we all know, technology is tripling every 18 months was the last figure I heard. I had a guy the other day tell me it's tripling about every year. I don't know what the figure is, but I know that technology is literally changing the face of our world. We are literally an information overload. And of course, as we all know, with all that added information comes the need for specialists. With the need for specialists comes the need to run our businesses a little bit differently. We have to team up, reorganize, on and on and on. And as we all know, technology is driving everything tremendously faster. So now you and I are dealing with something else. We're dealing with speed. Do you realize that we can send information from this room right here to London, England, and back in about 7 seconds? And some people think that's too slow. The third factor that we're dealing with is change. Technology and speed together are driving change. You and I live in an era that is characterized not merely by transition, but by transformation. Transition is slow and incremental. Transformation is dramatic. It's like that. You and I, as we look at our business climate, as we look at the future, you and I really don't even know what that geography is going to look like in 6 months from now. Some of us don't even know what that's going to look like a week from now. And so it's causing a lot of stress. These three things together have created a new phenomenon in time management, which we call time compression. Time compression is the expectation that you and I will manage more events per measurable period of time than any other group of people who have ever lived on the face of this planet. And not only will we manage more events, but we'll manage them with higher quality and with fewer resources. Okay? You feel the pressure, I feel the pressure, we all feel the pressure, and it creates a tremendous amount of stress. In fact, if I were going to characterize time compression graphically, it might look something like this. This is Jack. He's experiencing what we call the Jack attack. He's got fax, beeper, voicemail, email. He's getting information from everywhere. He doesn't know which way to turn. He's frazzled. In fact, he hasn't even had time to feed his pets, and so his bird's helping himself to the fish. I want you to notice what is under his left elbow. Jack is literally up to his elbows in alligators, but under his left elbow is a little boy. Folks, you and I have a question of balance here. How do we give our jobs the very best effort that we have every day and still have time in our lives for family, friends, outside interests, all the other things that are still important to us in our lives? And I submit to you that the answers are not easy. And I'm going to be the last person that's going to stand before a group of people like this and say, hey, I got all the answers. Because that would be super hypocritical for me to do that. But we have learned some things in time management. And what I think the starting point is to returning to concentration of power. Concentration of power is the ability to focus upon and accomplish the most vital priorities. Okay? When I think of concentration of power, folks, I'm taken back to my childhood. You've all seen one of these, magnifying glass. Perhaps you had an experience such as mine. When I first discovered this little tool here, it opened up whole new worlds to me. Everything that was small could be made bigger. One day I was outside playing with my magnifying glass, and I noticed a little circle of light on my arm. As I went through this little voyage of discovery, I soon found that I had inadvertently projected the sun's image onto my arm. And I discovered that if I moved the glass around, I could make that image big or small. Ouch! I burned a hole in my arm with the dumb thing. I said, what is this thing? And then I started reasoning. I thought, you know, if I could burn my arm with this, I could probably burn paper. You know, little boys think that way, but I've got to tell you, the other day as I was preparing for this, I actually went out in the backyard and I started some paper on fire again. I had to relive that childhood experience. But sure enough, you focus this little point of light on a piece of paper, it will begin to smolder, and then it will begin to burn. Well, what's all this about? Why am I telling you this cute little story? You and I, everybody in this room, we share two resources, and they're both limited. Those resources are time and energy. And I believe our only hope, folks, dealing with this hectic world is to learn how to concentrate that time and energy to get optimal effect. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to get where we need to go with our lives. Before we're able to do that, folks, we need to throw one more factor into the equation here. We need to talk a little bit about urgency. And what I'm going to suggest that all of us do is make urgency our friend, not our foe. Let me define what urgency means. Urgency means calling for immediate action. So technically, if you look at that definition, that's really not a way to prioritize. Urgency is a condition or a situation that elicits action from us. And once we understand what urgency really is, then we're more prepared to deal with time in the time investment quadrants. There are 4 of them. At any given time during the day, you and I are operating in one of these 4 quadrants. And by the way, if this looks a little bit familiar to you, it's because many time management programs have created permutations of this model, a model that we've been using since 1972. Up here in the first quadrant, crisis. Here, events are important and urgent. An example of this might be when the system goes down. Everybody scrambles. We've got to get that system back up so that we can get back and do our work. The next quadrant is quality. Here, events are important, but they're not urgent. Now, a good example of this might be exercise. I'm going to be honest with you. When this is over today, I'm going to hop on a plane and fly back to Salt Lake City, and when I get home, I'm going to be really tired, and I'm probably going to tell myself, even though I know I need to exercise, it doesn't matter if you do it today. One day isn't going to matter, okay? It's easy to put it off. And folks, the things in this second quadrant here, quality, they have high payoff, things such as long-term planning, exercise, family, friends. But because they're not urgent, sometimes you and I don't give them the attention that they deserve. The next quadrant is reaction. Here, events are not important, but they are urgent. A good example of this, probably the best example I can think of in my personal life right now, is email. In fact, I heard an account of an executive not too long ago that went on a 10-day business trip, and when he returned, he had 2,000 email messages. Anybody in here ever had 2,000 email messages? I've never had 2,000, but I've had quite a few, and I'm sure that a lot of you folks have been in that situation as well. Now, all those things are not important, as you and I know, but they seem important because they're urgent. They come via the technology, and technology creates this sense of urgency. The final quadrant is escape. Here, things are not important, and they're not urgent either. The best way I can characterize this is to kind of come up with a situation I run up once in a while. My life gets so hectic that once in a while I get to the place where I just want to curl up in my easy chair with a hot fudge sundae, a copy of the National Enquirer, my remote to watch Days of Our Lives. You know? But a question I have for all of you folks, who doesn't get to that place once in a while? It's real easy to get there. It's real easy to want to escape because of all the pressure that's on us. Anyway, what's all this about? Well, let me suggest something, folks. Just suppose that you and I could spend a fewer minutes per day in the crisis quadrant. Just suppose that we could spend a few less minutes reacting to the wrong kinds of things during the day. Just suppose that we would feel the need to escape a little less often because we'd be more in control of our lives. Just suppose that you and I could take 60 minutes a day and move them from those 3 quadrants into quality. Do you realize that if we did that for a full year, that you and I would have reinvested 6 40-hour work weeks in our lives? And I submit to you that that would make a tremendous impact on both my goals and your goals. Folks, as the world becomes more and more hectic, and you and I all know that it's going to continue to get more hectic, there's a tendency for people to look for quick fixes, to look for easy answers, to look for silver bullets, if you will. My experience in many different avenues of business have taught me that the silver bullets are few and far between. More often than not, what is required is refocusing on the basics, and that means, for time management, the 4 dimensions of time management. The first dimension is focus. Here we ask why. A few months back, I was doing a 4-week customer service training course for a major corporation. After the first 2 sessions, I learned that this parent company was selling off the entire division that I was working with. Make a long story short, these people are all losing their jobs. So I arrived to do the 3rd session, and I knew that people were going to be very cynical. And so having a sales marketing background, I thought, the most important thing I can do today is answer a very important question that these people all have on their minds. That question is this: why should I listen to you? I just lost my job. What's in this for me? And so what I did is I took the core concepts that we were talking about, internal and external customer service, and I applied them to these people's job hunt. How could they find productive and rewarding employment? And folks, I got to tell you something. Session 3 and Session 4 were much better than Session 1 and 2, because perhaps I did my homework a little bit better in answering that all-important question: what's in it for me? The next dimension is plan. Here we ask what? This has to do with goal setting. When I think of goal setting and looking toward the future, I think of a quote by Charles Kettering, the great inventor from General Motors. He said this: I expect to spend the rest of my life in the future, so I want to be reasonably sure of what kind of future it's going to be. That's my reason for planning. Folks, that's a compelling thought, because where you and I are right now in our lives has everything to do with the kinds of planning that we've heretofore done. And where you and I are going to be tomorrow and next week and next year have everything to do with the kinds of planning that you and I are doing today in our lives. Once we have a plan in place, we can move into the third dimension. That is act. Here we ask the question, how am I going to do all these things? And I want to come back and talk about this in a moment and talk a little bit about process. But before I do that, let me give you the fourth dimension. And that is team up. And here we ask the question, who? This has to do with our interpersonal communication skills, how we communicate with one another, how we run our meetings, and how we deal with conflict. But let's go back and talk a little bit about this third dimension, act. Time management is choice management. Time management is option management. Time management is decision management, because in time management, it's always between A or B, this or that. And in order to be successful time managers, folks, you and I have to have a process in place that will help us make intelligent choices regarding our time and what we're going to do with that time. So let's talk a little bit about process. I'd like to define two terms for you. The first is priority. Priority is simply a valued goal, and it's as easy as ABC. A equals vital. These are life-sustaining, crucial types of things, the most important kinds of goals that we have. Next comes important. And finally, C equals some value. The next term I'd like to define for you is prioritizing. Prioritizing is ranking goals according to value. Now, notice what it doesn't say there. Prioritizing says nothing about putting goals in the order that we're going to do them. It says ranking goals according to value. Now, most people, when they get to work in the morning, I don't know if you guys fall in this boat, but I know I do. We tend to do lots of the simple, easy, familiar, less challenging things. The reasoning goes something like this. Let's see if you can relate. I'm going to go ahead and get these easy things out of the way, because when I do, then I can really concentrate on what's most important. Anybody been there, done that? Folks, that's one of the giant time management traps that we have. Prioritizing is like this. 1 equals most valuable, 2 the next most valuable, and so on to as many events as you and I are managing. And while we're talking about symbols here, let's just go ahead and let this little asterisk stand for urgent, calling for immediate action. People are often asking me, if you had one time management tip, something I could do that would really impact my life, what would that one tip be? Folks, here's that one tip. Make an appointment with time every day, and that's the operative word, every day, to plan your day. Now, a lot of cynics out there are going to be sitting there thinking, yeah, I used to plan. I used to take the time to do that every night before I left work. But you know what happened? Every morning by 8:30, so many things had happened that my plan was completely blown out of the water. So I don't plan anymore. I found planning to be a waste of time. Well, let me share with you what our research shows are 3 reasons why most people's plans fail. We call them the 3 deadly planning sins. And the first one is that people attempt too much. Our research suggests that people underestimate by at least 30% how long things are going to take. And that creates a lot of anxiety as you have this big long list of things that you're supposed to get done today, and at the end of the day you've hardly made a dent. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we attempt and expect too much in a given amount of time. The second deadly sin is that we don't allow for interruptions. Now, one thing I know for certain is that every person in this room, myself included, can count on 1 or 2 or maybe even 20 interruptions a day. So why not plan for them? Why not expect them? Rather than playing like they're not going to happen and then being upset and disappointed when they do. And finally, people don't prioritize, and we've given you a system for doing that. Folks, I'd like to give you a little action list here. Each of these items has a priority. The first is expense report. It's got to be done by Friday or I don't get paid, but today is Monday, so we're considering that a B priority. The next item is an A priority. Set 5 client appointments. We're a sales and marketing organization, and I have a personal goal that every day I will set 5 appointments. That impacts my salary and in turn our company's success. The next item is resolve the customer complaint. As I was leaving work last night, there was a terse little note from my boss on my desk. It said, "Fix this, ASAP." By the way, our company values contains a statement that says, the customer always comes what? You guys have one like that too in your company. The next item is also an A priority. Payroll. It's due today by 3, or a lot of people are going to be very disappointed and very upset at me. And finally, the last item on our list is rearrange the office. Because starting Monday, I'm going to be sharing my office space with another person. And I got to tell you, right now my office is in a mess. It looks like the wreck of the Hesperus. So I'm going to have some work to do there. Now, some of you are out there thinking, oh, come on, Mark. Get real. My day is a lot more complex than that. And I know it is. But what I want to do is have a little bit of fun. What I'd like you to do is team up with a partner again, and I would like you to pretend that you are my boss and that you are going to prioritize my day for me. How would you like me to manage my day? Where's the A1? Where's the A2? Where's the A3? And where's the B1 and the B2? I would like you to prioritize my day for me. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Go ahead and team up, and then we'll see what you've come up with. Hey, I'm going to have to hire you. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and regroup. Is there anybody here who would be brave enough to share their priority list with us? Somebody from over here. Is there anybody from over here? I'm coming. And your name is?
Peggy Romano.
Peggy Romano, share with us your priority list. How did you do our list for us?
I said A1 is resolve customer complaint.
Okay, A1 is resolve customer complaint.
A2 is set 5 appointments.
A2 is set the 5 appointments.
A3 is payroll.
A3 is the payroll.
And B1 is expense report.
B1 is our expense report.
And B2 is rearrange the office.
And B2 is rearrange the office. How many of you did it that way? Can I see your hands? Wow, you're in great company, Peggy. Peggy, I would like to give you a deluxe edition of our day timer for your efforts. Let's give her a hand, folks. Is there anyone in here who did it some other way? Boy, you know, one of the things that I learned the further I go in life, folks, is that one of the problems you and I have is looking for the right answer. How many of you found that there are lots of right answers in life? Okay. Ma'am, yes. Your name is?
Elaine Armster.
Elaine Armster, nice to meet you. How did you prioritize our list for us?
Okay, I had the same A1, resolve customer complaint.
Okay, A1 is resolve customer complaint.
My A2 was payroll.
A2 is payroll.
A3 set 5 client appointments.
A3 is set the 5 client appointments.
And B1 expense report, and B2 rearrange office.
Okay, B1 is the expense report, and B2 is rearrange office. How many of you did it that way? Ah, you're in good company again. Elaine, again, I'd like to give you a copy of our deluxe edition of the day timer. Let's give her a hand, folks. Well, a lot of you are wondering, okay, Mark, how do you guys do it? Well, let me show you what our suggestion is. And again, this is only our perspective. Now, let me caution you. Let's give everybody a hand. Let's give everybody a hand. Folks, again, I want to underscore the fact that this is our perspective. And maybe your perspective is just as valid as ours if it differs. The thing I want to point out is now we have some criteria here. Well, let's go ahead and throw a monkey wrench into the works. Should we do that? How many want to do that? How many of you ever get one of those? Okay, here goes the line of reasoning again. Okay, Mark, I planned. Now look what happens. I have this boss request here. So we jump in and we get that boss request done. But then I have a question for you. Where do we go back to work? When we're done with that, where do we go back to work? We go back to our A1, right? If we can. Interestingly enough, that's not what most people do. Most people get caught up in what we call the ricochet effect. A boss makes a request and they get over here and all of a sudden they start talking to their buddy in this department. They're heading back, they get the water cooler, they get sidetracked to go over and help so-and-so with this. And by the time they come back to their action list, the day's almost up. How many of you have been there? Okay? Let me tell you what we have, folks, and this is very important, that we wouldn't have if we hadn't planned. We have here a complete list of decision-making criteria. So as our day begins to blow apart, which it often does, you and I have something against which we can measure our interruptions against. Is this interruption more important than my A1? Is it more important than my A2? And without that plan, we wouldn't have that. Let me put it another way. I never had a boss in my life that encouraged me to come in with something like we've got on the left there, a blank page. I say, you know, Mark, what I'd like you to do today is just wing it, okay? Just go ahead and, do whatever. That works for me. Having a plan helps us reground ourselves on our priorities, and folks, that's how we get concentration of power. That's how we get optimal effect, is knowing where the payoff is with our lives. We've talked about a lot of stuff today. Let me wrap up by sharing a story with you, and we've got a couple more boss requests here. You know how that happens. This story literally changed my life. A couple of years after I graduated from college, I was still struggling with the question of what I wanted to be when I grew up. Anybody in here been there? Don't feel bad, you've got good company. A gentleman in our community by the name of Rod Shumway, who is very influential, very wealthy, he took an interest in me in helping me find my way in the world. One morning I got a call from Mr. Shumway, and he says, "Mark, how'd you like to go get a burger with me later today?" Oh, I was excited, because in my eyes, Rod Shumway was somebody. And so I eagerly anticipated our meeting. That night after Mr. Shumway closed his office, he picked me up and we went to a local drive-in. We decided on our order, and then Mr. Shumway rolled down his window and proceeded to place that order. While he was doing that, I was checking out all the neat features of his neat car. I was scanning all around, and all of a sudden I noticed a little notepad sitting on the console between our seats. It fit there really neatly, but it looked a little bit out of place. And so curiosity getting the best of me, I looked a little bit closer, hoping not to look too obvious. What I saw astonished me. It was a to-do list. All the items on the top part of the page had been neatly checked off. And then I saw my name halfway down the page. It had not been checked off. I hurriedly looked away, and I sat there wondering, how on earth could this great man, this busy man, find time in his schedule to help me? But I want to tell you something. During the hour that we spent together, Mr. Shumway gave no clue that he had any other priority or anything else in the whole world to worry about except to be with and help me. What does all this have to do about what we've talked about today? Folks, I believe that time management at its core is about having a plan that's based on who we are in here, in our heart, and what we want to do with our lives. Time management is about having the patience and the persistence to work that plan every day of your life. That night with Mr. Shumway taught me a very important lesson. It let me in on Mr. Shumway's secret for success. Mr. Shumway had a plan, and he worked the plan every day. Therefore, he got the reward for having worked the plan. Folks, I have come to find in my life that one of the important lessons I've ever learned is this. If you and I have a plan, and we have the commitment to work that plan persistently every day of our lives, we can literally live our dreams, and in the process, we can make this world a really great place. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Mark.